At Sam's Club, you get incredible savings every time you shop. And summer savings just got a little sweeter. Stop by your local Sam's Club and pick up limited time offers, like 3 pounds of red grapes for $4.98. That's just $1.66 per pound. And 6 packs of Sabra hummus and pretzel cups for $9.98. Keep tonight's dinner simple with a freshly prepared chicken parmesan and pasta dinner. Serves 4 for just $5.18 a pound. Join and save. Sam's Club. Life is better in the club. See club for details.
Hello and welcome to Hormones Spoken here. I'm your host, Kelly Pappas, here with the man of the hour, our fearless leader, Dr. Howard Leibowitz. Hello.
Hi, Kelly. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
So we've got part 2 of the wonderful radio roundtable. Attorney Rick Jaffe and Assistant Director Eric Merola, and also Dr. Julian Whitaker coming in. So we'll skip host chat, which I know everybody wants to keep up with your personal life. But tonight, we're definitely going to get right to it because I know everybody's waiting online here. So let's see. Good evening and welcome.
Hi, Rick Jaffe here.
Rick Jaffe, so glad to talk to you.
Hi, Rick.
Again.
How are you?
So I want to hear about the personal life.
Yo, we do it every week. We've been keeping track of his personal life for like 2 years.
Yeah, we'll have to go hang out again.
Okay.
Who else is on the line now?
We're gonna get on the line. Hang on a second.
I think
Good
we have
evening and
Dr.
welcome.
Whitaker.
Hello. Hello.
We're waiting.
You're on the
we're waiting.
air. Hello.
Is anyone else there?
Yeah, Julian,
Rick still there?
might have a technical problem with Julian. It's going to be some kind of 3-way iPhone call or something, I heard. I don't know if it's going to work out.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's very official.
Is there a way to do that with an iPhone?
Hello there. Welcome to the show.
Anybody else on?
Well, we want to talk
here.
to you anyway, Rick Jaffe.
Sure, why not? I'm here.
We're just talking to Howard about, he said, I really wanted to talk to Rick Jaffe tonight. And I said, I wonder how much of your very life you've sacrificed doing this case.
Well, of course, the irony is I moved down to Houston because of Dr. Burzynski. Because we started working, and I was in New York City and working in a 7-man law firm. I was another partner, and in 1990 I was down in Houston 12 times, any time from a day or two to a week or 2 weeks. So it was just easier. I mean, it was a busy case, and in law you go where the work is. So that's where the work is, and my wife was in the energy field, and I thought that maybe the case would last 6 months, a year and a half, and then I'd figure something out. And
how long has it been?
Well, the actual case, we moved down in early '91, and then I would say the criminal case ended in mid 1997. And then there was another year or so of civil litigations that we had to clean up, and I would say, so it was almost 7-8 years just on one case, and the medical board case lasted 10 years. So it's just one of these things. It just went on and on and on. And
is that very atypical or unusual for medical type cases and board type cases like this?
Well, it's pretty unusual. I mean, I've never had a client. I've had clients that had medical problems. I've been before medical boards in maybe half of the states in the country. I've done criminal cases around the country. I've done civil litigation against insurance companies around the country for doctors. But I've never had one client that's had everything. So it's just everything. I've never had a client that had so many people going after them at any one time. I mean, I think it's unprecedented. And I don't know, I've been knocking around for 25, 30 years. I've never heard of anything like this.
Why do you think there was so much energy spent on this case? Why was there so much directed at him like that?
Well, I think it was a function of his success, in a sense. There are a lot of guys out there around the country and women that have invented drugs or concepts. I represented this guy Emmanuel Ravisi, and he just, he had a little practice, but it just, he didn't stir up all that much trouble. So he had malpractice cases and some board cases. And he was doing the same kind of thing. I mean, he had his own little drug that he invented, or so he trace minerals and selenium, and it wasn't that big. But Burzynski had this manufacturing facility. He treated a lot of patients, and he was very visible. And I think he was very close to home because he came from Baylor and he was a biochemist. So, and he just wouldn't back down. So. It's hard to say. I mean, maybe some of it's the pharmaceutical industry and all, but way before the pharmaceutical industry got involved, there were just federal and state government forces that were trying to put him out of business. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's unprecedented. I don't think there'll ever be. Burzynski is the only individual doc that's ever really completed phase 2. Trials, and he's the only doc certainly that's ever got permission to do phase 3. It's unprecedented. It certainly will never happen again. I mean, the way the system works, you could never do what Burzynski did over the last 30 years.
My goodness.
In the movie, they make a strong case about how this treatment, the anti-neoplastons, could, effectively negatively impact the multi-billion-dollar industry of cancer therapy. I mean, do you think it's financially driven that way? I mean, do you agree with the movie's philosophy about why there's so much attention paid towards him about this?
Well, it's like any kind of history. Every historian or every director has its own point of view, and I think that's look. I was there. I was involved. I wrote or reviewed some of the initial letters between Burzynski and Elan Pharmaceutical, and I remember I met the scientist Devorit Samit, an Israeli woman, and I remember in the beginning, I kept on asking Stan. I said, she's writing these articles about phenylacetate. I kept on asking him, how come your name isn't on any of these articles? And what we got back from Samit was, well, your name isn't so good here, and you're going to surface later on. And Elan, then got in the picture, and then at the time we didn't know Elan had hired Devorit Samit. And so look, there's certainly part of that. And then NCI got involved, and they started patenting things. So I think that's a valid element to all this. But my view, having experienced it and gone through it, I think it's very complicated. And when you're a doctor and you're not performing clinical trials and he wasn't willing to give his drug to Baylor, there are people that get upset. I mean, Dr. Burzynski did something that most big-time legitimate doctors don't do. He treated patients with a drug that was not FDA approved and not part of clinical trials, right? And in mainstream, legitimate doctors don't do that. Mm-hmm. Even for diseases for which there is no cure. It's just not done. I mean, hell, most of these conventional docs are reluctant to give off-label use of drugs beyond what has established in the community. And one of Dr. B's problems now is he has a much broader use of off-label use than most docs. So you have a very conservative medical community, and that act of giving a patient a drug that had no federal approval is ultimately an act of heresy for anyone in conventional medicine. Mm-hmm. And that's just the way it is. I mean, and even if you save life, right? And that's in a way, it's kind of like the ends don't justify the mean. They don't care about the result. I mean, so I think that was, from the point of view of conventional medicine, as big a part as anything. I mean, and because he came from Baylor, and he was a medical doctor. He's not, no offense to naturopaths, he's not a naturopath. He's not a homeopath. I mean, this guy had an MD and a PhD, and he spent 7 years at Baylor. He was one of them. Mm-hmm. Right. So, I think it's complicated. And I don't think it'll ever happen again, this kind of situation.
It is indeed history. I was wondering if anyone else is there on the line. The switchboard is open.
Well, I just got an email that Dr. Whitaker apparently isn't available tonight. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. He was traveling someplace, and they were going to try to do something with this iPhone or something, three-way. But it's pretty hard because it's very hard to get a connection on a three-way.
We'll definitely miss him. I wanted to play just a bit of Burzynski, the movie, just for people who maybe this is their first week listening, just so they could catch up. And by the way, you're great in the movie, Mr. Jaffe. Love it.
All right.
Okay, hold on.
I did not want to undergo chemotherapy, which I had a new name for, chemotherapy.
The doctors told us Dustin had only a few months to live. The first treatment offered us was radiation.
It burned her skull so bad she had second-degree burns and her hair never came back.
The next doctor wanted us to enroll Dustin in a experimental chemotherapy.
To change her diapers, we had to wear rubber gloves because her urine was so toxic and it burned her.
I came 18 years ago from communist Romania, and the tyrannous dictator Ceausescu never stopped a doctor from treating anybody. How can we have something like this in the United States?
I'd like the following questions to be asked the FDA. How much money have they spent in the last 10 years to try to put Dr. Burzynski out of business? How many documents can they subpoena, and how many more grand juries does he have to go to? And why can't patients who have advanced cancer seek the medical treatment of their choice?
The issue of whether anti-neoplastons work may not even come up during the trial. The judge says that's not relevant.
Dr. Bruce Cohen is the director of neurologic oncology at the prestigious Cleveland Clinic.
The only explanation is it shrunk because of the therapy.
He confirmed Dr. Burzynski's results.
And I was sick listening to the lies of prosecutors. This was like a criminal act. They knew what they were doing, and they knew that these patients have really no chance to respond to any treatment. They're going to die.
His tumor, which was larger than an egg, has shrunk to the size of a pea.
The last 7 years that we've had Paul, and he's been healthy, and I owe it to this man. And there's no way that I'd ever be able to thank him enough for what he's done for us.
From the documentary Burzynski, the movie, we have Rick Jaffe here, the attorney, and the switchboard is open, so if anyone is here on our radio roundtable, please speak on it.
I just got another email that Dr. Whitaker is on the show.
Well,
yes.
The switchboard's wide open. Please say hello.
Yes, I'm Dr. Whitaker. I'm on the show
right now.
Hello,
Dr. Whitaker. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Hello, Rick Jaffe.
Hey, how you doing? Hey, by the way, Julian, and did you guys hear that? Do you see the Variety article? Eric sent me a link to the Variety article. The review of the movie was pretty good.
I know. I've seen several good ones. Yes.
Yeah, but Variety. I mean, Variety, and Julian, you got number 2 billing, starring Stanislaw Burzynski, Julian Whitaker, and then Richard Jaffe. So I was joking with my wife. I finally made it.
He's right. Of course we should be getting good reviews.
Right. Yeah, that's it. So we've been reviewed by Variety.
You're all stars in your own right.
There you go. Legends in our own mind.
Absolutely.
I'm not a legend in my own mind.
So, Dr. Whitaker's on the line. Maybe we could ask him a couple questions. So, you played a significant role in helping Dr. Burzynski. How did you get involved with the anti-neoplaston activity and Dr. Burzynski? How did you meet, and how did you get interested in helping him?
Well, I'm a medical doctor, but I use a lot of preventive and wellness medicine, a lot of orthomolecular or vitamin and mineral medicine, and I kept hearing about this doctor down in Texas that was being persecuted for his cancer therapy. And I was very used to this. And so what surprised me initially about Dr. Burzynski, because I didn't know anything about him, was that he kept surviving.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would think that he was being investigated by the FDA. The Texas Medical Board was after him. Insurance companies were after him. And he kept surviving. So I called him up out of curiosity, and I asked to come down and review some of his records, because what he was doing I was not aware of, and I was just curious as to someone not only was doing something very unique in cancer therapy, but was surviving the onslaught that brought. I reviewed the 7 cases that the National Cancer Institute reviewed also in 1991 when they made a site visit. When they made a site visit, Dr. Burzynski had 24 cases for them to review, but they only reviewed 7. In all 7 cases, the tumor had either disappeared or was in substantial long-term remission. In all of them. Now, these were cases in which that you don't expect that to ever happen. These were medulloblastoma, glioblastoma, and a sarcoma of the brain. These were serious tumors. And I knew at that point that Dr. Stanislaw Burzynski had discovered the cure for cancer. Now, when you have the cure for cancer, it doesn't mean that everyone that goes to him is going to survive any more than everyone that has pneumonia is going to be cured with antibiotics. But it does mean that antibiotics is the cure for infectious disease, given other general circumstances that would be favoring the therapy. Whereas without antibiotics, it's just luck that you survive. Now he had discovered a mechanism. He understood that the cancer was dividing in an undisciplined fashion. He discovered peptides in the body that the body manufactures to control this undisciplined cell division. That discovery coalesces as a treatment for all cancer, not just brain cancer, not just breast cancer, not just uterine cancer, not just prostate, pancreas, colon, but all cancer, because all cancer have the same multiplication defect. The body has lost control of controlling undisciplined cell division. And by giving the very items that the body uses and manufactures itself, these genetic triggers, then control is reinstituted, and since the cancer cannot divide in an undisciplined fashion, the cancer just goes away. It goes in what we call apoptosis, because these cancer cells are not healthy cells. They're very unhealthy cells, and they have to divide very rapidly or they will die. And so Burzynski found the genetic triggers that stopped the undisciplined cell division and has been struggling just to be able to use this in patients who would like to have this therapy. And if people knew about it, that would mean virtually every cancer patient. So the NCI, the FDA, HHS, all of them have to block this, because their paradigm is not to stop the cancer cell from dividing, but to purge the body of the cancer, cut it out, radiation, chemo, and it is horrific what individuals go through with therapies that even conventional doctors know don't work. So Burzynski has been in this struggle. It's one of the most titanic struggles, I think, in human history. It is more severe, more prolonged, more violent, and more consequential than what Galilee ever went through, or what Semmelweis, that just wanted to get doctors to watch his head, what he ever went through. This is the titanic struggle of medical advancement, of all struggles in medical advancement. And the reason this is such a struggle, such a 45-year struggle, is because it would make obsolete virtually all of the cancer therapies that are now being done. And that's $1 trillion industry. And $1 trillion is $1 every second for 340,000 years, just to give you an idea of what's at stake if they turn Burzynski loose. That's my point on it. And that
what about all the lives he could save? Doesn't that count for anything compared to the money? I mean, money is money, but lives are people.
There are Michael Friedman, Robert Spiller. They know that their activity has caused close to 10 to 15 million deaths. I have written that Robert Spiller and Michael Friedman would go into your child's room who was receiving antineoplaston that was curing a fatal brain tumor, and they would disconnect him and walk out knowing that your child will die. Those are the kinds of people we have in powerful places in our own government. And so what do we do about it? They're not elected. We can't vote them out. The National Cancer Institute doesn't even have to have approval for money to flow into them from Treasury. So we have this huge problem because we can't even prosecute these guys for the crimes against humanity that they know they've created. They know they've done it. It's not like I know it and that we need a court of law to figure this out. They know it, and they still do it. That's what we're facing here in 2010, but this struggle has been going on for 60 years. And that's, I think, a part of the problem that we have is that when you have such coalescence, I know Rick Jaffe was talking about how conventional doctors get so mired in process, get so mired in convention, get so mired that no one ever even thinks anymore. They're like trained seals. They don't think. And then, like trained seals, they know if they don't do the trick exactly as they were taught to do, someone's going to shock them with a rod. And that's what doctors are these days. It's unbelievable how brain dead these guys are. There was one guy on Larry King, on Joy Behar, and I told him, just go down and look at what he's doing. That's what I did. I'm not going to let some jackass from Cleveland Clinic, puffed up with all his authority, tell me that Burzynski's a quack. I went down and investigated. Everybody who is coming after Burzynski wants him to fail. Either they went to see it and they saw that he was right, or they know he's right and they have to destroy him.
Hey, by the way, guys,
give
me 1 second, Julian. I just want to let you know that Eric is on the phone now, too. He just sent me a text message. Eric, you there?
Sure. Hi, Eric.
Welcome in, Eric Merola, producer, director of documentary Burzynski, the movie. Hi.
Can you hear me?
Of course we hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I've been on the phone since the beginning of the show. Forgive me. I kept talking and no one could hear me.
Yeah, we're just going to wait till the end of Dr. Whitaker and bring you on in.
Oh, perfect. I'm sorry. I just realized that no one
Welcome.
was...
So glad
thank
you're
you.
here.
I don't want to stop Whitaker's thought, though. That please finish. I'm just glad to be here and be able to speak.
We're glad to have you. Dr. Whitaker, how do you really feel?
Well, I hate to expound like this, but this
I love it. You're the perfect guest.
I've been living with this for 15 years.
Yes.
Okay? And I've seen people die unnecessarily. And I know of, I don't even talk about it to people that I meet who are struggling with cancer in their family, because the FDA won't let Burzynski save their life. So why even build up their hope? And I can't, and Burzynski came here to escape tyranny.
Yes.
He had no idea that when it comes to innovation or true development in cancer, this is the most tyrannical culture ever when it comes to blocking something that has this magnitude of benefit. See, Burzynski's therapy could reduce cancer to the same kind of fear factor that you have for infectious disease, such as pneumonia or a hangnail or bronchitis it would be the same thing because we know how to cure it. And the people who made the advances in antibiotics and made the advances in cholera and made the advances even in vaccination, they didn't face a $1 trillion industry.
Dr. Whitaker, what do you think would happen if one of these directors of the National Cancer Institute or the FDA, what do you think would happen if one of them came down with one of these tumors and they knew what they know about anti-neoplaston?
Wow.
Do you think they would still be in the position they're in, or do you think they might try to get treated that way?
I don't think it matters. I don't think what they would do is germane to this conversation. I don't care what they would do. That's not germane to what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, yes, Dr. Burzynski has discovered the cure for cancer. It could be improved. It could be developed. You can have other anti-neoplastons, but we have discovered the mechanism, the cure. What everybody says we've been looking for, what everybody has been promising decade after decade. He's had it. That Michael Field, these other guys, whether they would use it or not, that's not relevant.
Well, maybe Eric's movie will help change it. Hey, by the way, Eric,
well,
what do you think?
I want to ask another question first, Dr. Whitaker. This is really a very powerful statement, and this is not just an American process. This is a whole process for humanity. So why can't the anti-neoplastons be taken out of the United States and developed all the way else around the world? And the hell with the FDA. Let other people benefit from it.
They are being taken out of the United States. China is about to bring it on board. Thailand is about to bring it on board. Japan is relatively far along. But, we're not the only country with vested interest in tyrannical activity. But others are much more aligned to it than America is. Western Europe, probably not. Western Europe and the United States are joined at the hip in many ways. But it has been taken out. As a matter of fact, I think what Burzynski could do and have a big service is to set up in one of the islands free from this tyrannical country and have people come there for treatment of cancer. Now, one of the reasons he doesn't want to do that is because he would have them all come and they would hit the same kind of blockade if he gave them the therapies to take back to Minnesota, take back to Cleveland, take back to Atlanta, take back to Dallas, that you can't transport this stuff. Of course, that's nonsense. But anyway, that's the blockade. I say, hey, wait a minute. Set up in an island and say, you want your cancer cured? You're going to have to stay here 6 months.
Yeah.
And people would come.
Yeah.
But, why do we have to flee our own country to get good, proper, appropriate medical care that we want?
Well, I think it's precedent setting, like you said, and I think if they open the door, I think they might be afraid of all sorts of other things. Who knows what other people might try to bring in that way?
No, I won't buy that a bit. This is what I think, and I've been living with this now for 15 years. You come up with a quack remedy for cancer, FDA will leave you alone. They don't care. Quack remedy, come up, go ahead. The public is going to find out. You come up with a true breakthrough, the FDA will kill you. Because once a true breakthrough gets out, they can't control it. Quack remedies, you got people, and I think it might even work on coffee enemas. You got all this you got a lot of things that I think actually is helpful. But they don't have the predictability, the mechanism, the clarity, the focus, and the data that Burzynski has. Now you're treating the cancer. So, no, you let Burzynski through with it. Now, what you're saying is we can't have advancement because if you have advancement, then everybody will want to do everything else. That's absolute nonsense. The FDA needs to turn him loose so that we can all get on about our business and not have to be terrified and suffer at the hands of complete ignorance when it comes to cancer. That's what we need to do. Turning Burzynski loose has nothing but positive aspects for the culture. Everybody thinks that doctors are so avarice or so greedy or whatever that if they're all going to be now charlatans if we turn Burzynski loose. That's the weakest kind of argument for his restriction that you can make. But as I said, well, we already have that. You got all kinds of people running around with nutty things, but public don't go to them because they know it doesn't work. You see, we have. You think with the insurance industry and with our public health plan that's being formulated and all of that, you'd think they'd want to use something that would save money, especially the insurance companies. They don't spend trillions of dollars on cancer therapy. They want to make money too. They're in the business of making money too. Use yourself with rational thought when describing what the government is doing. Okay?
Well, what about a country that's nationalized health care? Wouldn't they want to save money with a good cancer treatment? Like Canada or Sweden or someplace like that?
Nationalized health care doesn't progress. There hasn't been a single, that I know of, any innovations coming out of France or Britain or Canada. The only country that has truly progressed over the last 100, 150 years has been the United States. Virtually everything that has been of noteworthy progress has come out of the U.S. That will continue to happen until the government controls it, and then it will be just like France, just like Canada, long waiting list, and it's just going to be so miserable. We already have, everybody used to come to America with medical tourism. They would come here for their bypasses. They'd come here for their hysterectomy. They'd come here for, anything that was high tech because we had the golden, we knew how to do it. Now, with all this government intrusion, they are leaving the country. Thailand, it can provide surgery for joint replacement cheaper, more effectively, shorter than the United States can because of all the regulations and all the government. And so now there are certain insurance companies that actually encourage and pay for them to be a medical tourist in Thailand. Get out of the country. It's cheaper and better. That's the end result of government-run health care. And everybody can yell and scream, oh, that's not true, that's not it. Okay, show me a country where it's not. Everybody says they like it, but in Canada, I see a lot of patients from Canada. They have to wait 6 months for a routine operation, a hernia or something like that.
Yeah.
So, Eric, I still want to hear from Eric how he likes it being in Variety for his first thing.
I got to admit, it's very surreal because, frankly, the Variety is sort of like the Bible trade magazine for the entertainment industry, and usually, they're very excited about things like Sex and the City or The Sopranos, things like that, and to actually have Variety give me a little bow for Burzynski's story is not only is exciting, not just for me as a filmmaker, but obviously for the relativity of the story. It's incredible. I'm kind of speechless. I have to be honest. I am speechless after today, after yesterday's awful reviews, and then today's stellar reviews from sort of the quote big boys, LA Times, New York Times, etc. I'm kind of my battery's running low.
Tell us what the LA Times said. I didn't see that one.
Oh, the LA Times so far is the most stellar one. They mentioned Julian Whitaker at the end as well, which finally somebody did, because he's such an important part of the film, as of course you are, Rick. But I don't know. I don't want to read the whole thing unless you.
Oh, read the good part. I'm sure you probably don't remember it, but you probably remember a page or two.
Well, okay, I'll read the first paragraph. Eric Merola's Burzynski charts how a Texas medical doctor and biochemist developed anti-neoplastons, genetic targeted medicines, and with them began to treat a wide range of cancers, including difficult-to-treat brain malignancies, with remarkable and continuing success, only to bring down the full force of the medical establishment, which has laid assault to him the most stupefying, devious, and costly manner. I don't want to read the whole thing. It's not that long, but it's long enough.
Right.
But it's fantastic. He paid attention.
That is in today's LA Times?
That's correct. It just came out about 9 p.m. Eastern time. I emailed it to your wife, so she's happy.
Hey, by the way, when is this movie? It's playing in LA this week, right? When's it starting?
Friday, June 4th, simultaneously in Los Angeles and New York City. It plays June 4th through June 10th.
Where's it playing in LA?
The Lemley Music Hall in Beverly Hills on the Wilshire Boulevard, 9036 Wilshire Boulevard.
What time?
Let's see. I'll just tell you really quick.
5:30 and 7, right?
Oh, during the week it's 5:30 and 7, but there's a lot more shows on the. Okay, Friday, June 4th, 5 p.m., 7:30, and 10. Saturday, June 5th, 12 p.m., 2:30 p.m., 5 p.m., 7:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. Sunday, 12 p.m., 2:30 p.m., 5 p.m., and 7:30 p.m.
And they have a website or
to
something?
the theater. Perfect.
That's great.
Yeah.
So they probably have a website where people can go online and look up what the times are, right?
And of course, the Lemley Theater is very well known. So
yeah. All the
the website would be the Burzynski website would be the BurzynskiMovie.com. It would have a listing of all the places where it's played. Listing. Eric, you'll be putting on the reviews on that too, at least the good ones, right?
Are you kidding me? I've got now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 good reviews. Then as I read them, I post them, and they're all there. So
good.
I mean, it's interesting. If anyone's read yesterday's Village Voices review from Ella Taylor, it's as if, frankly, she never watched it, and it was a very reckless, kind of clumsy attack on myself, on everybody involved in the film, and of course the film. And it's kind of very reassuring and satisfying for me to see sort of the quote big boys, LA Times, New York Times, Variety. Dr. Joy Brown, by the way, who's a nationally syndicated radio host, been on Oprah, CBS, Larry King, who all love it and respect and appreciate and recognize exactly what it is. So it's interesting. I think the general public's going to see the handful of negatives and then the large amount of positives and make them only more intrigued to see the film, which I have to thank the negative reviewers for what they did, frankly.
As long as you spell your name right.
Let me make a point here, because there's been a lot of things like this. Aaron Brockovich had a point, and had a nice story about it, and movies made about it, etc. But what we have here with this rolling gradual acceptance is that we have a major cultural advance in human civilization. That's what this means. This means that cancer will not be the horrific angel of death that it has been for the last 150 years. I mean, cancer will soon be the number one cause of death. We're looking at millions of people that can survive. Now, you're going to have all the stories, that are kind of provocative. You're going to have human culture doing wrong again. Other companies going to pollute water and stuff like this. But this is a cultural advance. This is a major one.
And Dr. Whitaker, in the film, you say that it is treated just like he gave her an antibiotic. That's exactly what you say in the film.
Right.
When antibiotics first came into being, did they face this kind of resistance?
I was going to ask that. Yeah. Did it?
I don't think they did, and I think one of the reasons I don't think they did is that there was not a huge economic barrier to changing horses. You see, they really didn't have an economic approach to pneumonia. Either you went to bed rest, or they gave you a pneumothorax with surgery, or they bled you, but they didn't have proton beam accelerators, and they didn't have, 75 expensive patented chemotherapies, and they didn't have robotic surgical arms to enucleate cancer. They didn't have all of that. I said with Semmelweis that all he wanted people to do was wash their hands after leaving an autopsy room and go on women who died in childbirth, and then going up to deliver children. They not only didn't wear rubber gloves, but they didn't even wash their hands. Now, that hit resistance to the point where they kicked him out of the profession for his heresy, and he died in an insane asylum. But as I pointed out in the movie, good gosh, if that's the way they treat Semmelweis, you can't imagine how they're treating Burzynski, because you have the same arrogance, you have the same stupidity, you have the same brain deadness that you always have in authority figures, only now you got $1 trillion at stake. They keep saying we're going to do this cure, and as Eric so conventionally points out, they haven't given Burzynski a dime, and he's already discovered and brought to the public the cure for cancer. Not a dime has come from any kind of support. I never give any money to a cancer charity because I know where it goes. And it turns my stomach
where does it go
to know where this money goes.
Where does it go?
It goes to the same guys who've been sucking out of the government. It goes to the same guys who suck out all. It goes to the same guys over and over again to do exactly the same things. And everybody has this kind of glow about we're going to find the cure for breast cancer, and I'm walking for the cure for breast cancer. Burzynski discovered that 70 years ago. And no, we're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again, giving money to it, taking it out of the public trough, charging insurance companies. The oncologist, unlike most docs, they do their own infusions of the chemotherapy in the office, not in the hospital.
Yeah.
That is, physicians generally, with something that dramatic, they do it in the hospital. But oncologists have millions of dollars in insurance and public funds just for infusing therapies that they know don't work. But they do it anyway.
What about a private fund, like the Milken Foundation that does all this work for prostate cancer? Do you think
they could do it? They could do it. Private funds could do it. Okay? But, they have to kind of know about it. This is one of the things that I'm so excited about Eric Merola. And by the fact, Eric, I've said this to you personally, but I'll say it publicly as well. This is an excellent documentary. Excellent. Because you put together things that people who are familiar with Burzynski didn't know. And you put it together in such a way that it is unassailable by anyone with a rational brain. It's an excellent documentary. And,
thank you so much.
It will get its due in time. I mean, I'm very hopeful now.
Me
well,
too.
It's certainly getting its exposure, and I think this is going to bring a very powerful message to the public that, they haven't heard about this before. I can't imagine it not causing a huge stir. I mean, it's almost been a secret up until now.
Yes.
I think it'll be a stir depending upon how many people see it, depending upon what the reaction is. I know as I was telling Eric today, when I read all the negative ones, I mean, they sound. I'm so familiar with the negative ones, and I say, Eric, that's not a bad thing. That's what you expect from those people. But when you get good ones, and you get good ones from generally conventional sources like the LA Times and Variety, that's when you got to pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
Because
this is the kind of story, that should really be out on the talk show circuits and Larry King Live and all that kind of stuff, I mean, that's where you'll get a lot of exposure.
This is the American, got that Frank Capra thing going on. It's really the American dream.
Do you guys know who Dr. Joy Brown is? She's supposedly the syndicated radio host. She's been on Larry King and Oprah. Her review is so glowing. And she says, I'm going to read a quote. Let me quickly find it. Okay, this is a huge indictment of the medical community, the FDA, the National Cancer Institute. And she says, and if all my colleagues in talk radio were really interested in changing the world, this is the story that they should be focusing on. Boom. Mm-hmm. She also says this documentary should be shown at every medical school in the country and probably to everybody. That's exactly. It's just, excuse me. I'm getting very excited to actually see people respond to it the way that I'm.
Eric, I want to point out something that just to give the listeners here a view of the resistance it meets.
Sure.
You had probably 20 or more stellar examples of incurable cancer being cured. Not one physician who told the patient it was incurable would even make a comment on air regarding his estimate of the child or the person's future and what actually happened when they saw Burzynski. Not one. Mm. Now, that indicates not that each one of those individuals is so bad. That indicates how strong and completely infiltrated the evil truly is. That they could be so cow-tied as to not even put themselves in a position of commenting. And even those that did comment in the movie, they commented in the movie because they more or less had already commented. Petrosius and the fellow from Pennsylvania, I think from what was it? Anyway, even those that did comment will never make another comment.
True.
That indicates a degree of I don't think it's fear. I'm not sure what it is, but it's something truly evil. I'm not sure that these people are evil, but I think there's been an evil grasp upon them that blocks. They're so trained, so conditioned that they can't even think. Nothing is right or wrong. Nothing is good or bad anymore. It's just, this is what we do. And they will not defend it when something like this hits them right in the face. That's just astounding to me.
If I dare say, it's very much similar. I don't want to go into this realm, but I will anyway. But it's very religious-oriented. It's like Orthodox scriptures that you sort of have to adhere to, and don't you dare step outside. That's a terrible sacrilege if you even think about doing that. And Nicholas Petronas, whose testimony I had in the film, I tried relentlessly to get this man to participate in my film, knowing that I had his under oath court documents where he flew from D.C. Down to Texas to testify on Burzynski's behalf. He did it on his own accord, and I left him so many voicemails. I left him so many emails. Tried to be as tactful as possible. No return email or phone call.
That's the scary part of it.
Yeah,
that's the very scary part of it.
So he was. They shut him down, and that's kind of, and that's I think why I think people are afraid to come forward, and that's why they'll do it if they have to once, but they won't do it again. Eric, I have a question for you. Did you try to talk to Black and some of these other doctors that said all these patients were going to die?
I did want to. When I realized how much I wanted to cover in the film, I did have a very much longer film in the beginning, and I did have the intention of putting in the Larry King show, clips of that with Dr. Black next to Burzynski, and I was going to call him out.
Yeah.
Yep. I was going to call Dr. Black out in the film on the fact that he was waving around the NCI trials that were obviously rigged. I was going to point out to the viewer that, well, now you know what he's talking, how illegitimate that is. And I was also going to point out that one of Dr. Black's former patients, or at least he consulted with, was my first patient in the film, Jody Fenton, who was cured 30 days after being on Dr. Burzynski's anti-neoplastons. So to answer your question, no.
Antibiotics, right.
Exactly. And to answer your question, Rick, no, I never actually contacted Dr. Black, but it's sort of like I took one step at a time, and I wanted to see what I could actually put in the film. I had specific goals. I wanted to show the discovery of the treatment, prove that it works, and I wanted to show the audience that not only does it work, but this is happening under FDA supervision, and you're not looking at one patient, you're looking at the entire clinical trial, and here are the results. I also wanted to show state persecution and the victory of that. Federal persecution, the victory of that. And again, like I said, the NCI trial is being rigged. And, of course, the big granddaddy, which I'll say, I think it's okay to say now, is the patents. And then once I got all of that in line and I was able to meet the goals that I wanted to meet, I realized how much running time I had. I just sort of had to, my own personal choices, I had to cut out what I felt needed to go. Because I wasn't going to, myself as a director, I couldn't live without the bullet points I just mentioned. If it means cutting out, going after Dr. Black or this guy or that guy, it meant enough to me to do so.
Yeah, this is your story, Eric. I agree with you. Your story is so much bigger than individual naysayers. It's just
right.
They will pass into oblivion fast enough. Fellas, I've got to run. I've got another obligation, but I very much enjoy being a part of this, and thank you very much for having me. And Eric,
thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Whitaker. It's fascinating to hear you speak about this. Thank you so much.
And we'll be doing it again. Thanks a lot.
Come on
okay,
back.
great.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Wow, he sure is opinionated about this, isn't he?
He has no opinions about anything.
He's very outspoken.
It's funny.
Eric didn't make him the star of the movie for nothing.
It's funny. I have to be honest. It's funny that the Village Voice, when the article assumed that I was like some sort of, that I was in cahoots with Burzynski, and he implied that he wanted me to do this film. But the reality is, I talked to all these patients along the way. I was traveling around the country interviewing all these patients, and everybody kept mentioning Dr. Whitaker. And Dr. Whitaker this, Dr. Whitaker that. Never even heard of him, frankly. And I was very green on Burzynski's story. I just knew the basics after reading Ralph Moss's The Cancer Industry, and I just had to go after it. So I went sort of like casually. I was out in San Diego area, in the Newport Beach area, and LA area, interviewing different patients, and I was like, okay, well, Whitaker's on the way. I'll interview this guy. I had no idea who he was, knew nothing about him. And I was just stunned, and I was so incredibly excited about what he could bring to the table. So anyway.
One of the things that we didn't really touch on tonight is what his role was in how he helped Dr. Burzynski, and probably how he helped the movie. Do you want to talk briefly about what he has done over the years?
Sure. As I mentioned in the film, he once the FDA indicted him, he used the power of his newsletter. At the time, I think he only had a couple of hundred, maybe 250,000 subscribers. Now I think it's at least double that. To use his newsletter. It's a paid newsletter, which people pay for hard copies to arrive in their mailbox, not like our email newsletters that we're so used to. And he used that to help try to raise money for Burzynski. And one of his star patients, Mary Jo Siegel, who's just fallen in love with Burzynski since he cured her 20 years ago, used her home to sort of be the center for all the checks that would come in. So Whitaker advertised, say, hey, send in what you can. Here's the address. And they ended up getting like some 18,000 checks and small donations, varying donations. Yeah, but because Whitaker has so much reach and has such a committed following, I got to be honest. I mean, when I step back and realize from a financial standpoint, and even bringing in new patients to Burzynski while all the negative press was happening, when the average patients were not willing to go to him, Whitaker kept reassuring everybody, no, if you have cancer, and you got to go to him. And so there was a time where, according to Burzynski and Whitaker, like 80% of his patients in the mid-90s indictment period were coming from Whitaker's recommendations. So it really helped Burzynski out tremendously, from what I understand.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So during the time that he was under attack by the FDA and the National Cancer Institute, he was actually able to treat some patients, and there were some people who did benefit from anti-neoplaston.
Absolutely. He was treating plenty of patients at that time. In fact, Jessica Russell, the second patient in my film, the brainstem glioma patient, the parent, that was back in '96 when she was diagnosed, and that was right at the tail, right in the middle, actually. I think the trial itself, Rick, am I right? It's like it was early '97 when the trial happened.
Right.
Yeah. So it was '96. So they were down there protesting. They were in fear of whether or not, the treatment was going to be yanked out from underneath them, while they're in the middle of it. So yeah, he was treating lots of patients at that time.
Right. They never closed the doors, and what happened was the FDA, the government really pulled a fast one. This is really one of the nastiest things they did. Is they indicted him, and then like a month later, they tried to stop him from treating any patient. And their theory was, okay, we indicted him, he's out on bail, and one of the conditions of bail is that you not commit any crime. And they said, well, how can you treat patients? Because it's illegal for him to give the medicine under state and federal law, so stop him from treating any patients. And this is still a year away from trial. So they made this motion around Christmas, and the judge, it was right around Christmas, and so the first time they made the motion, the judge denied the order, the request, but then they renewed the motion back in February, a couple months later, and sure enough, the damn judge granted their motion, and he actually said that you can't use the medicine anymore on patients unless you have FDA approval. So we were in a bad place. So at that point, the clinic almost closed. But what happened is we went to Congress the year before they indicted him, and, we kind of knew that what we were doing was only going to last so far, and eventually the government was going to put the screws to him and probably try to shut him down. So when the judge issued the order, we got one critical concession from it, and the concession was that he stayed his order. All right? He said it wasn't going to go into effect because we told him we're going to appeal. So we're going to appeal. Appeal's going to take a few months, and we want him to stay his order, and he did that. And he knew exactly what he was doing. The judge in this case, Simlake, was, he had to do what he had to do, but, he was a human being too. So he basically told us, look, it's illegal, or we think it's illegal. You need to find another solution. And he gave us, in effect, 3-4 months to do it. And then what happened is we went back to Congress and had hearings, and then our congressional supporters, mostly due to the patient support group, put enough pressure on Congress, and Congress put enough pressure on the FDA, so the FDA backed down. And even though the government, the prosecutors, wanted to yank all the treatment from all the patients, the FDA realized that too many patients were going to die, and they looked bad. I don't believe it's because they were humanitarians, and they backed off. And then what they did is they put in, with one stroke of the pen, they agreed that all those patients could be on clinical trials, all his present and future patients, if he'd file INDs. And even though it was the largest approval of INDs ever, and I understand they had a staff of 50 employees looking over the paperwork, but literally with the stroke of the pen, they said it's legal for him to treat his patients, and that made the judge's decision moot. And that's how all the patients stayed on the treatment.
Well, we've got 90 seconds left for the show. I want to thank you, Rick Jaffe, for coming back this week, and, of course, Eric Merola. Hang on to your, I remember last week you were talking about that you wanted to go really follow in Dr. Burzynski's footsteps in terms of being, your integrity. And I hope with all this groundswell, you'll keep that. Dr. Julian Whitaker, we thank you so much for taking the time to call in. And, of course, our fearless leader, Dr. Liebers, will be back with you next week.
Yep, we'll be back. Thank you so much, everybody. This is a fascinating discussion, And, you know, I think we're going to be seeing a lot more about this. This is just getting started, and I think it's going to get bigger and bigger. And I really appreciate everyone coming on the show.
Let's do this again soon. Good night, everyone.
Absolutely.
Everybody, great job. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.